Please welcome Georgetown University's Institute for Women, Peace and Security Executive Director, Ambassador Melanne Verveer, and Girl Up Coalition leaders, Maryam and Nivaal.
Hello everyone, my name is Maryam.
And my name is Nivaal.
We're twin activists, journalists, and Girl Up Canada Coalition leaders, and today we have the honor of interviewing Ambassador Melanne Verveer.
We cannot begin to describe how excited we are to be with you. Thank you for all of your incredible contributions and your work for women's issues and their rights around the world. Please give her a huge round of applause. She's incredible. You truly are an inspiration for us all.
Well, I'm very excited to be here too. And if you can tell the two of them apart, help me out. I've been backstage with them for the last 15, 20 minutes. We were having a scintillating conversation, and I can't still not tell them apart.
We'll get it eventually.
Yeah, so that brings us to our first question. How did you become the U.S. Ambassador for Global Women's Issues, and what was your personal journey toward that role?
Well, like all of you, I think I was interested in our world. It was a very different time, very interested in politics, and not really focused so much on gender equality and women's issues. But I was elected to work with Hillary Clinton when she was First Lady in the Clinton White House, and spent 8 years there. And one of the seminal moments of my life, and hers in many ways, was the UN Fourth World Conference on Beijing. Now, I know most of you, if not all of you, weren't born when that conference took place. We are marking the 25th anniversary next year. And that conference had such an impact on so many, because there were all of the officials who gathered from all over the world, and then there were tens of thousands of NGO activists, many young women. In fact, one of the young women that I knew there, I didn't know her at the time, she was listening to Mrs. Clinton's speech when she went to this section of the conference where the NGOs were gathered, and she couldn't get in. It was so jammed. So she was in an adjoining room. She said she held her ear against the wall, and she decided then and there her life would be working on gender equality issues. Today, she's the president of the Vital Voices Global Partnership, which I and Hillary Clinton and others started several years ago. But that kind of influence and impact, it changed all of us. And when the First Lady of the United States stood up and said, human rights are women's rights, and women's rights are human rights. Now, people might stop and think, what's the big deal? That's true. But back then, these rights weren't even chiseled into international law. And women are human, so women's rights are human rights. And this is the legacy that all of you have. And I was telling Nivaal and Maryam that I was at the UN yesterday, and we had a very robust discussion why young people need to be part of the big anniversary next year and get engaged in the next decade of activism on these issues, because it's so important. So now, to answer your question, that was a seminal moment for me, working on these issues in the White House. And then we worked with so many women, and you're representative of them, from all around the world, creating partnerships across borders, women learning from each other, wanting to be a part of what each other was doing. And they said to us at the end of the administration, you can't abandon us. We need to stay to be part of a network. And that's how we started Vital Voices. And it was recognizing that the voices of women are absolutely vital to their societies. And it's part of mentoring and training and really working to enhance what women can and must be doing and have the full rights to participation. So I spent 16 years counting the White House and staying with Vital Voices and building the organization. And then President Obama's, I'm sure at some urging from Secretary Clinton at the time, said we should have an ambassador for global women's issues, and they tapped me for the job.
That's amazing. So, during your time as the U.S. Ambassador for Global Women's Issues, what were some of the challenges that you faced and how did you overcome them?
Well, that's a very good question because I think it's the challenges that you'll be facing as you move into different areas that you're going to pursue out of high school or college. And that's how do you take your passion, which is gender equality and promoting and advancing women at home and around the globe, and how do you persuade others of that? And the State Department is not unlike other governmental institutions. There are very traditional ways of doing things, and really coming in to promote global women's issues and saying they need to be part of everything we do in our foreign service through our diplomatic efforts can always bring pushback. And one of the things that was very clear about the position was not to be there just to create women's programs, nice programs, observing Violence Against Women days or marking a peace day, but really to integrate these issues. The State Department is enormous. It's embassies all around the world. It's an economic bureau. It's a conflict and stabilization bureau. There are offices on human rights. There are offices on anti-trafficking. To basically integrate the fact that women need to participate and the gender perspective needs to really be brought into every aspect. The foreign minister of Sweden started what she called the feminist foreign policy, which is very much like that concept. Integrate these issues in everything, not silo them. And in Canada, as you well know, your government is also committed to a feminist foreign policy. Now, for those of you in the United States, sometimes if we say feminist, we'll be made out to be some sort of strange people. But the point is that half the world's population really needs to be understood, their perspective needs to be brought to bear, and we need to ensure their participation to create a better world.
That's awesome. So can you share with us the progress you've seen women make around the world from the grassroots level to the highest levels of government?
I always say that women are on the front lines of change everywhere, and that is so true. We need to put a spotlight, I think, on the extraordinary work that women are doing, often at great risk to themselves. Malala took a bullet just to make the case that she believed it passionately, that girls deserve an education. There are women who are struggling with conflict in their regions who understand what's happening, who understand what needs to be done. We need to ensure that they can be at negotiating tables. There are women who are doing incredible work in what we call the not counted in their own economic numbers. How do we move them into the formal economy? So I think we're heroines in so many places, in so many ways. And one of the things that troubles me, that I know that these two understand so well, is how in some societies girls aren't valued. Child marriage is taking place. Hundreds of thousands of girls find themselves with their lives snuffed out. There are issues of harassment, issues of marginalization. If I can tell a really quick story, it's so hard for girls to go to school in some places, and I was told about a project where a father wanted to marry his daughter off. And he said to her, it's time for you to leave the home. It's time for you to leave school. It's time for you to go off. And I've selected this person for you. And she said, Daddy, I'm not going to get married. I'm in school. I don't want to get married now. And he said, no, it's going to happen. And so they went back and forth. They went back and forth. Her mother was worried about it. But she was part of a program where a goat was deeded in her name to support her family. So in some places, you get foodstuffs, bags of grain, other ways that parents are inspired to keep their girls in school. In this case, she said, "Well, Daddy, if I go, the goat goes." And he said, "Oh no, the goat belongs to the family." And she said, "No, it's my goat," because she had a deed and it was in her name. So we need incentives. We need to find ways. We need your voices to really ensure that every girl has the right to go to school, that we can work to change attitudes. We can work to ensure that parents see the value of educating their daughters, but also to work at levels to influence government officials, local, state, national levels, to stress the importance of girls' education, but that it be quality education. We're doing better on that, but we're not doing as well as for girls to go to secondary school. Secondary school is a huge challenge around the world still in many, many places. So yes, women are, and girls are on the front lines of trying to make a difference, like all of you. And we need to work together so we can strengthen those efforts and spotlight those efforts, lift up voices that are not accustomed to being lifted. You know, when I was in India years ago with Mrs. Clinton, there was a young woman who gave her a poem, and the poem said about it was about her parents, her women in her country, and it was, "My mother was silent, our grandmothers were silent. It's time to end the silence. And when we end the silence and have power, our power is not for ourselves. Our power is to raise the voices of others who are still silent." I've never forgotten that poem, and I think it still speaks volumes about what we all need to be doing.
Definitely. And when we think about, peace and conflict situations, from your perspective, why is it important to have the front and why is it important to have women part of peace and security talks?
You know, there is a framework for the United Nations. Some of you have studied it. It's Security Council Resolution 1325. It's known by its number. And the Security Council, almost 20 years ago, linked women to peace and security. Not just because women are suffering so much in these conflicts and need to be protected. Rape is a tool of war in some of the civil wars that are going on in various parts of the world, but also because the agency of women is so important, their voices, their experience. And when you think about it, there are so many women involved trying to end conflict as best they can, but they know what's needed. They know what's needed at the level in which they're living their lives. And where women have been engaged, and this is some of the work that we're doing at Georgetown, study these cases. Women bring issues to the table that have to come to the table. Human rights issues, economic opportunity issues, crossing divisions, reconciliation. How are we going to heal these societies? And it's happened in Northern Ireland, but this needs to be happening everywhere. And today, only 8% of the negotiators are women, and only 2% of the mediators. So we have a long journey to move women and their abilities, their skills, their talents into this sphere, which matters for the world.
Absolutely. So just to wrap us up, do you have any advice for the girls here in their advocacy efforts and how they can take leadership roles as well?
I would just say do everything you can in all the ways you can. I have seen young women all over the globe be engaged. And if I knew each of your stories, I would imagine that the aggregate of your experiences is making a difference. I hope you'll get involved in the climate issue. The situation is dire. It is going to be something you are going to struggle with in your generation, worse than it is now, clearly. And what Greta's voice in Sweden has already said to the world, this young girl, young woman in Sweden, basically saying to the world, to world organizations, to leaders, you have let us down. So your advocacy and all the ways that you can manifest it, think of the young people in the United States and what they're doing to stop the horrible gun warfare that's going on in this country. Your voices matter. Girls up. That will make the difference.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.